Hi friends, it's Becky, and I'm finally getting around to sharing the tutorial on these skull earring designs. This is something that I played around with on a live, but because our lives are not really tutorials, but they're actually just hang out with us and beading sessions, I asked if folks wanted a real tutorial on how to do this, and the answer was yes. So we're going to do this. I know that it is after Halloween and after Dia de los Muertos while I'm doing this. However, you may be somebody who wears skulls all year round, or you may want some ideas for things you could make next year. So if that's the case, go ahead and save this so you can come back and watch it again after you've watched through the first time. And you can do that. But basically, I love these Czech glass sugar skull beads. They are just one of the funnest beads out there, and I got them in several of the bundles that I got this Halloween in spooky season. So we've got some from the Danielle Wicks Halloween bundle, which was fantastic. There were 2 different sugar skulls that came in that one, so you could do like completely different colorways using those sorts of things, and I wanted to show some variations with this. That's one of the reasons why it took a little while for me to get it, is because I started thinking about different variations. So you've got that, and that's the one that I put together, and the one that I'll demonstrate today. But then I also had some that I got from a spooky bundle from Cassandra at Beads to Live By, and that's what this one was. And I'll show you the differences between them in a little more detail in a little bit. And then there were also some beads from the Marigold Memories Sam's bead box. That's what these were from. And so I really love these. They're really, really fun. And I also used the bead mixes that came with that one as well. Well, it didn't come with it. It was an additional purchase, never mind. Okay, so we've got those. So basically all you need for these are the sugar skull beads. You need some 11-0 seed beads. And, or, some 8-0 seed beads. Well, I would say or. I start with 11-0s on all of these variations. But you could start just with 8-0s if you wanted to, I guess. But you need some seed beads, and then you need some of these 3mm bicone beads. I actually got these in both of my little bundles here and in Sam's bead box, so it worked out perfectly to be able to do all of these variations with that. But you can also do a variation where instead of extending it out that far, you could do just a smaller amount of the brick stitch around there. It does make it a lot lighter if you're worried about how heavy it is for earrings. That's one of the reasons I did this, is to show you that variation. So you'll need those, and then you'll also need some sort of flower here as a drop or dangle. For the one that I made on our live, I'm using some bellflower beads. For the one that I made with the Cassandra Spicer bead mix, it's just some of these tulip beads, but the way I put it together is exactly the same. It's just a different bead shape, that's all. And for this one, there is a different technique for putting this together because it has these button flower beads. And so when I get to demonstrating this part, I'll also switch over to show and demonstrate this variation so that you can, if you want to do this one instead, just follow that little track or path as you go through this tutorial. So I'll demonstrate both this and this. This one is exactly the same as this, so I don't need to demonstrate that as well. And then you'll need a hoop in order to bead around. Now this is a 25mm hoop. I just got a little pack of these from Amazon, and I'll share a link to where I picked these up in the description below if you want to find that. You could also just use a plain hoop, one that doesn't have these extra loops on them if you wanted, or you could make your own with some craft wire. I just really like how convenient it was to have all of these and to have like a starting point and an anchor point for the link that I make at the end with these other flowers and beads, which I used some 22 gauge wire for. So that's another thing that you'll need in order to create this. And some ear wires. on here, and let's see, I think that's it also. A beading needle. You'll definitely need one of these. I also have 6-pound fire line. I've got a full wingspan's worth. You are going to use most of it because it's a lot of brick stitch on here. I've already got it on my needle and it is ready to go. Let me clear some of these guys out of the way and I will talk about what seed beads I'm using for this. Also, it will be a separate video that I make this into a necklace, so look for that. I just wanted to make sure that you know that this is the same method that I used for this, and so we'll include that in a different video. Let me get these guys out of the way, and we'll get started. I don't need these yet. With our beads. Alright, I've got 2 different colors of 11-0 seed beads. There are these light amethyst teal lined 11-0 seed beads that came in that bundle from Danielle Wicks. Now the bundle itself is sold out. She does often sell extra bits of beads and that sort of thing on her website. And then there are these light crystal with a purple lining that I have on here. And then some 8-0 seed beads that are the exact same color as these first ones. They're just larger. So these will be my 8-0 seed bead color A for those. I've got color A and color B. And then I've also got these sort of gold Picasso 3mm bicones that we're going to be using. Now, if you're familiar with brick stitch, this is not going to be new information for you, but if you're new to bead weaving and you want to try this out, I'm going to start at the very beginning, and that is attaching my thread. Now, I could go through the hoop starting needle first, but instead I'm just going to grab the end of my thread, put it through my hoop, and I'm going to tie a knot on here. I like surgeon's knots because they are very secure as far as that goes. So I'm going left over right and then going through once, pull that tight. I want to leave a couple of inches. You don't need a lot of extra over there. And then I'm going to go right over left. When I go right over left on this, I'm going to go through the loop twice with my end, pull that tight, and then orient the end of my thread next to the loop. And this is something that I learned from Danielle Wicks actually for starting brick stitch, and I found that it works fantastically for getting that first bead oriented the right way against your hoop. And that is to start with just one bead at the beginning of this. And I've just picked it up with my needle, and I'm starting with my bead A, my color A, 11-0. And then instead of putting it right up against here, I'm going to slide it along and make sure that the end of that thread goes through it. That thread end that I just tied on. And once that's on there, go ahead and pull that apart and see how that just orients it perfectly right there. Alright. Now I like to support my brick stitch with my finger behind it. It's just one of those things that I do. I'm going to pick up another 11-0 seed bead, and this is one of the ways that I make sure that the bead stays where it needs to go. I'm angling this just slightly, going behind the hoop so that the end of my needle goes in front of the hoop over here. And then I'm pinching just the bead against there. You can use your finger to hold onto it to hold it in place. It's okay if it moves around a little bit, but it makes it a lot easier for this part if it's already right there. because once it's right there, I'm going to go back up through it from front to back, or from bottom to top. And that's going to anchor that bead right there onto my hoop. Pick up another bead, hold it in place, go back up through that bead, and this is brick stitch. It can be a very meditative kind of a stitching where you just do the same repetitive motions until you go all the way around to get to the other side. So there I am, holding that bead in place. See, it's okay if it's a little bit further away, because when you pull it taut after you go through it, you can snug it right up next to that other guy. So I'm going to go ahead and add all of my beads until I get over here to the other side right next to this loop. And when I get here to this loop, you can join me again and I'll show you how to step up to the next round. Alright, so I have brick stitched all the way along the outside of this ring, and I stopped right here. This is my working thread. I put my last bead on right here next to the bead, and you can wiggle it around to scooch these closer or make more room or something like that. It's a little easier to scooch them closer to each other there than it is to, if they're too crowded, make more room along there, since they're not actually like stitched into something, they're stitched around it. But I'm going to be doing my second round of 11 seed beads. Now, if you're doing a minimal style like this, where you just have the 2 rounds, I skipped straight from 11 seed beads to 8 seed beads on this variation. So if you do that, then you'd start with the 8 seed beads instead of skipping over to, or continuing on with your 11 color B. Now for this is the only time that you're going to pick up 2 11s is when you're starting the beginning of the next round, because the first one is going to sit on top of this, the second one is going to sit on top of here. So I'm going to skip this thread bridge, that thread bridge that you can see that I'm going through. I'm going to skip that one and go through that next one. And the thread bridge is just that thread that connects all of the beads together going on there. And when I do that, you can help them and assist them to sit right. It's going to pull those through, and then I'm going to go back through just the second bead, not the first one, just that 1 second bead, and that's going to anchor it in place, and it's going to be ready to continue brick stitch along. This one's going to be a little bit loose, but that's okay, because it'll tighten up as you go. So then I've got another thread bridge over here, so I'm going to pick up a seed bead. This is my color B seed bead, and I'm going to go through that thread bridge. Make sure you actually go under the thread bridge, because sometimes I will think I've gone under the thread bridge and it turns out that I didn't actually go under the thread bridge, so when I go back through the bead like this, it just goes all the way through and the bead falls off. And I just turned this around because it's easier for me this way to go from left to right when I'm doing that. You can still go from right to left, having it turned that way. It's just what I'm comfortable holding it as. It might be different for you, the way that you do that. Now, one of the fun and magical things about circles and things like that is that it takes more space to go around it the further you get from the center. So you're going to come to a point where you might have just put a bead on and there's still a bunch of that thread bridge that you can see underneath it. When it starts to get that much space, you can take your needle, add another bead, and go back through the same thread bridge you just did. And that's going to fill in gaps. It's going to make sure that they're not too far spread out. And you will end up with more seed beads around this edge than the lower level. So now I just added that one, and they're both in the same thread bridge. And I know I keep saying the word thread bridge, but it's actually kind of fun to say. But now I can go to the next one, and it's all evened out. And it's not going to be like every other one, or even every 5th one. It might be every 6th one, or sometimes every 7th one. You can tell as you're going, and this is very tangly, so I'm just going to untangle my thread here. There we go. But yeah, you can tell when it does that, because you'll see a lot more thread bridge underneath that bead than you normally do. So like there's no thread bridge showing on that one. This next one is definitely the next bead. So I'm going to keep doing that. So I'm going to keep going around, and when it looks like I need to add an extra bead, I'll add an extra bead. Like I said, it's not even going to be every 5th, maybe every 6th, maybe every 7th one. You can count them out and try like that and see what works for you. I'm going by vibes on that, and that works for me. But yeah, if you need to do a little bit more math or something like that, you are more than welcome to. But I'm going to keep adding my little color bee beads all the way around the outside. And then when I get over here to this side, I'm going to step up and use the 8/0 seed beads. And so I will meet you back here. We'll step up and use the 8/0 seed beads. And we'll talk a little bit about how with the 8/0 seed beads, we don't necessarily need to add more beads as we go, because they're thicker and wider. So they're gonna, by nature, take up more space as we get further away from the outside or the inner diameter of the of a circle. It's one of those fun things. It's easy as pie. That was a math joke. Anyway, I will be right back after we do this and get this all the way around. Alright, so I have stitched all the way around. I added extras about there. I can't tell, but it's somewhere over here. It blends in. You can pinch the sides to help settle those beads a little closer into place. And if you can't tell, my beads are heading out that way. So for this next bit, when I switch to my 8/0 seed beads, I'm going to pick up 2, just like I did the last time when I was coming up out of this one. But instead of skipping this next thread bridge that's right next to where I'm coming out of, I'm just going to go right through it. Just going to go right through it. And that way, when these guys pop over here, it will come closer towards the middle instead of heading out in a V shape the way it was. And again, just like with the other, I'm going to go through that second bead that I added, not the first. Pinch this and pull it tight, and now they are there in place. And I can continue around, just going through that next thread bridge with these 8/0s all the way around until I get over here to the other side. And I may do a little trick at the end to make sure that we are not continuing a V, but are coming back towards the middle a little bit more on that next level. So I will meet you right here when I am getting ready to add my last couple of beads for this round. But it's basically the same thing. You pick up your seed bead, go through the thread bridge, lock that into place by going back through your seed bead after you've gone through the thread bridge. And it should go a little bit faster with these larger beads. Alright, so I've stitched all of my 8-ohs all the way around here, except for right here at the very end. There is enough room for one above these and then one over here a little bit on the side so that it juts out a little bit more like that one. And since there's only one thread bridge here, I'm going to be going through that same thread bridge twice. So the first time with this seed bead, go through that thread bridge, up through the bead I just added, and then pick up another one, go through that same thread bridge over here, but maneuver, there we go, and then go back up through it. There we go. You see how that closes that up just a little bit. There's still enough room here for us to be able to attach the other part, but now I'm going to step up. I'm coming out of that bead there. I'm going to pick up 2 of these 3mm bicones. I'm going to skip that thread bridge right next to it and go through the second one. Boop, boop. And these sometimes will sit a little bit funkier because of their shape, so you can 100% help adjust their shape, and they'll adjust easier once you go back through that second one. And this is just when you're starting the beginning of a round, that's when you do your 2 at a time. Otherwise it's just 1 at a time. And there we go. And then we can add another. Go through that next thread bridge. You don't have to pull these taut until after you've got it arranged into place. And I don't usually pull them very tight on this outside either. I just want the thread to hold it into place. And so I'm going to continue all the way around here. When we get to the other end, I will show you how to transition to the part where we add our skull and flowers. So when we get over here to the other side, after I've gone all the way around with this, and again I'm just rotating it because it is easier for me to go left to right rather than, left to right rather than right to left when I'm doing these. I don't know why, it just feels easier to me. But I would encourage you to try different handholds to see which way works best for you if you are not used to the brick stitching. But I'm going to continue all the way around, and this is totally fine if the thread is showing on the outside, because that's what I've got going on here. Got thread showing on the outside. Sometimes if you've got like colored thread or something, that can be part of the design. I think on one of these I used the crystal thread, so you can see that, versus the black thread that I'm using for this one. So whichever one is going to give you the best contrast, I think. black thread does show up better on camera anyway. So I'm going to finish this up, and when I get over here to the other side, I'll meet you right back here. Okay, now I've got all of my bicones around here, and I just want to pull out my other examples of variations just to give you an idea of how different they look when you choose different color palettes. Like this has a higher contrast with some brighter beads. This one has a lower contrast with more homogeneous look of those colors. This one's got some contrasty colors, but it's got a darker outline, and this one's got a lighter outline. And that's just one of those things to keep in mind when you're choosing colors for your project, if you're doing one with us, is that it's going to change the look of it. I don't have any sort of value judgment to pass on it. I like all of these, so I'm happy with the way that they all turn out. I love when things look a little bit different, so I'm just gonna put this away real quick. And let's move on to this part. I grabbed these other beads and put away some of the other ones. I'm going to need 11-Os for this part. The flower beads that I'm using, and my skull, and you can use different types of flower beads. Again, I'm using bellflowers for this one, but I used these tulips for this, and I used these button flowers for this one. So if you can put a needle through it and string it on, then it's something that can be used. So what I'm going to do here, I'm coming up out of this bead. I'm just going to go around it and down into this next bead and kind of work my way through the 8-O and both rows of the 11-Os. You might only do it like one row at a time, like me, or if you can angle it so that you can go through all of them, that'd be even better. But I want to be coming out of this 11-O next to this hole. If you notice, my tail thread is still just hanging out there. I'm leaving it so that I can tie this off when I'm done. Alright, so now I want to go through this loop down here, and that's just so that I've got a top anchor point for adding my skull. Now the skull is just a little too small to fit comfortably here between this loop and the other, so I'm going to add a 11-O as a buffer. Pick up that 11-O, go from the top of the skull down to the chin, and it's going to be loose in here until we get down, do all of our flowers, and go back up, just so that you know, so you're not freaking out if it's a little loose when we do this part. It's totally okay. We will absolutely tighten it up when we go back. And I like to use my needle to kind of visualize exactly which of these beads on the end I'm going to want to come out of. I'm just going to pinch that with my finger so that I know where I am going with this. Alright, and I'm going to move my needle to the front so that I can see. So I'm pinching this bead, that's the one I want to go out of. So I'm going to start by going through those 11-Os, and pull that, and then through the 8-O, and if I can angle it right, there we go. I'm going to come right out of that bicone. That's the one that I had identified as being directly opposite this on the other side of that loop. Speaking of loops, I've got some thread starting to catch on there. So now that's going to fit just nicely. Like I said, it's going to be a little loose until we go back through. So I'm going to ignore it, and now I'm going to add my bellflowers. I've got my thread coming out of this bicone. Let me count how many I did. 1, 2. So 2 11-Os. I'm going to pick those up, go through my bellflower from the smaller end out towards the bell end. And I'm going to pick up another 11-O and go back through the bellflower and these 2 11-Os and through all of these guys. I'm going to go up through the 8-0 that's next to it, and then skip over to this 8-0 that's right next to it on the other side, one that sort of shares the same space as the bicone that I'm trying to come out of. That way when I go back down, I can go directly from this 8-0 back into that bicone. So back into the bicone so that I'm coming out of it. I'm going to be attaching all 3 flowers the same way. 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2 of the 11-0s, and that 3 is going to be the bellflower. Come on. Oh. Hold on, don't tell me there's no hole. No! Well, I guess I'm going to attach 2 bellflowers today, and then I'll worry about getting a hole drilled out for that one. But it's basically going to be the same. I had no idea there was no hole there for that. Let me see if I've got any extra bellflowers. I do. There's more than just those bellflowers. Let me swap that out for one that definitely has a hole. There we go. That will do. That was just from the bundle that I got from Danielle Wicks. Alright. Sorry about that. So where are we? I've added the 2 11-0s, my bellflower, and I need to pick up the 1 11-0 that's going to be my anchor, that's going to keep this on here. Then go back through the 11-0s, the bellflower, the 11-0s, and that that bicone. If this happens, if your thread gets caught, just pull the anchor 11 out a little bit, and then pull your thread tight. And back up through the 8-0, into the next 8-0, and down that bicone. And then 2 11-0s, a bellflower, and an 11-0. And we're going to skip that 11-0 that is right there on the end and just go through the bellflower, those 2 11-0s, and the bicone. Now I'm going to switch this over because my thread is coming on the front of the work out of this skull, and I'd like the thread to go around the other side of this when I go back up through the skull. So I'm just flipping it around so it's easier for me to work my way up and not have to try and go underneath the work. Go through the 8-0 and 2 11-0 rounds till I am coming on this side of the hoop. Again, the thread on the other side is on that side. This way it'll help lock that skull into place as I go up through the skull. Up through the 11-0. And on this side, up at the top, you'll want to look at your thread to see where it's coming out of. It's on this side of the work, so I'm just going to go through the work so that I'm on the other side. Flip it over, and then go back through this little loop, like that, and pull that taut. And now I've got my bellflowers, I've got my skull, and I'm going to head over here to this 11-0. This is the first one that I added. I'm going to go up through it. It's got a few strands of thread going through it, so it's a little bit on the tight side, but I've got 2 strands coming out of that bead, so I can tie that off and then burn off my excess. So I'm going to go around once and then twice for my second one. Let's burn that off. Now, if you are using these different beads, like I did with the ones from Sam's Bead Box, I've just got some 11/0s here. It is a little bit different when you get to this part. That's where you're coming out of the bicones, or in this case, one of those 8/0s that's on the end of the work. So for this, I'm going to pick up 2. No, actually, I'm going to do 4. We're going to pick up 4 of these 11/0s and then go through one of these button flower beads, pick up 2 11/0s, go through these button flower beads, 2 more 11/0s, go through the button flower bead, and then I've got 2 more 11/0s. So this is what it should look like on your needle or on your strand, where you have 4 11/0s, a button flower, 2 11/0s, a button flower, 2 11/0s, a button flower, and 2 11/0s, like that. And now I've got it over here. I am going to go through just these first 2 11/0s that I added and the 8/0 that I originally did. And it looks like I'm at the front of this, so I'm going to go around to the back. So I'm going through that 8/0 that I was coming out of. Let's pull this a little tighter. Go. And then I'm going to go through this 11/0 next, right next to that 8/0 that I'm coming out of, if I can, and then through my skull bead and the 11/0 that I added here at the top. So this is pretty similar to where I was at the end of that. I just didn't go in and out and in and out 3 times with my beads down there. I went around in a little loop, adding those 3 beads. That's the only difference that I did with this. And now, there we go. Just getting the skull attached the way I want it to be. Then I'm going to tie off my thread and burn it off, and I'll have my minimalist one done. That's the one where instead of doing 2 rows of 11/0s and 1 row of 8/0s and 1 row of bicones, I just did 1 row of 11/0s and 1 row of 8/0s. This will be lighter if you're concerned about how heavy the earrings are. It'll also be a little bit smaller if you're not into earrings that are big. Not everybody is. I like big earrings, but not everybody does. And it's totally, totally okay. There we go. So that's 2 variations. And that other variation, you're just going to be doing basically the same thing with these tulip beads that you did with the bellflowers. It's basically the same. But those are 2 of my variations. Now for these, I am making a link. Let me grab my wire working tools for that. I've got some round nose pliers. I've got some chain nose pliers. And I've got some flush cutters. So for this, I'm going to just be using simple loops, and I want my simple loops to be perpendicular to each other. So I'll show you what I mean by that in just a sec. Let's see. Right, for this one, I actually want the other color of 11-Os for this one. And I only need a couple of those, actually. That's color B. And that's just to add buffers. And then I need 2 of the bicones that I was using for this one. There we go. So for this, I'm going to put on 1 11-O, a bicone, and I like to work off the spool because it helps me minimize waste. Actually, no, the bicone goes first. Bicone and then the 11-O. There we go, because that 11-O is going to be between the bicone and my big purple and black flower bead. And then an 11-O and the bicone. And this is 22 gauge wire that I'm using. So I'm going to take my round nose pliers now and grab this about 1/3 of the way down the barrel from the tip. Just right between there. You don't have to squeeze super hard, but I am just going to turn that till the wire touches and then bend the wire back in order to make a centered loop. It's hard with the way the spool is going. There we go. Also, my bead mat has a lot of stuff on it, so it's very confusing for the camera. That's going to be easier for it to autofocus onto. There we go. I'm going to measure about 1 finger's width down, snip the wire, not your finger. And I'm just supporting this with my finger while I bend the wire over a little bit. I'm going to measure about 1 centimeter away from the bead. I know from experience this is how wide this part of my finger is. And then we're going to roll that up with the round nose pliers. So on the first loop, I made the loop and then made the bend. On this one, I made the bend and then made the loop. Alright, and I'm just giving the loop a little smush with my pliers. It helps work harden it. And now we're going to make sure that it is perpendicular. I've got both loops in some pliers, and I'm just going to make sure that they make a cross. There we go. And the reason for that is just because of the orientation of this finding in combination with the ear wire. Let me show you why. I'm going to take this finding and swing open that loop like that with my chain nose pliers, attach it there, swing that closed, and now I'm going to open up my ear wire. Attach it to that link, and now that's finished. I have my second earring. That is all ready to go like that. And it's going to be exactly the same with these smaller flower links and with these much smaller flower links for the minimalist one. And I will be turning this guy into a pendant focal on a necklace in another video. So keep an eye out for that video. It's going to pop up. If you want to hit notifications, turn those on for this channel, you won't miss it. Once that pops up for that, it is going to be using some more of the very colorful beads that came in the bead box, and I've decided instead of a flower above it to use one of these Czech glass hearts. I think that's going to look fantastic like that. But yeah, there's a lot of different variations, different ways that you can make this yours. Look through your stash, find all of your sugar skull beads. I'm wearing a shirt with a skeleton on it, so for me, this isn't exactly a seasonal design, but it could be seasonal to you. And if that's the case, hang on to this for next year's makes when you want to do something spooky. Otherwise, have fun making with these sugar skulls, and I will put links in the description to all of the sources that I got the beads from, but also the sources for these hoops that I used, because they're a pretty fun little finding. I obviously have had a lot of fun using them with this application. Until next time, my friends, happy beading.